Now, the Bram Weinstein Show on Washington's new home for sports, ESPN 630.
Hey babies, hi everyone, What's up?
What's going on?
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
4-year anniversary of that.
4-year anniversary of that. Ron Rivera is speaking right now, actually. And the news is he did not name a starting quarterback for the finale against Dallas this weekend. So I guess we'll find out tomorrow because the starting quarterback talks on Wednesdays.
That's right. Yes.
So we'll find out tomorrow, won't we? Okay.
The gamesmanship never ends.
Yeah. Well, hey, what are you supposed to do?
Let's go have ourselves a game.
Yeah. Go play Dallas. Same scenario as last year. Dallas kind of needed to win, albeit they needed the Eagles to lose.
Yeah, it was an if scenario.
And they were playing the Giants, same as last year, playing the Giants, and the Giants pulled all their guys. So Dallas needed a miracle, then win, and it ended up not mattering because the Eagles won. This year's different. They are winning in, and I subscribe to with Dallas all along. They need to be at home to make a real playoff run. Right. I think that's been proven out throughout this year. So I think we're going to get a very good Dallas team this weekend who's ready to win. And, stinks of an 8-game losing streak as we head into the offseason.
Best thing for me personally was the Eagles losing because my Dallas tickets sold overnight that I put up on the old SeatGeek there. So
yeah, this crowd is not going to be fun this weekend.
Which I said, I wonder who bought those.
Yeah, it's not going to be fun.
Yeah.
I knew it on the Eagles. They're a mess. They're totally a mess.
Yeah.
They're totally a mess.
Yeah.
So, and Sirianni's acting really weird. Really weird.
I don't think they'll fire him, but
I don't think so either. I've called. I think they'll go one more year of it, and then if it's the same thing, then they make changes.
But you and I talked about this on Friday and earlier in the week, where I'm really interested. What does Roseman do once they get bounced from the playoffs because they're going to lose in the playoffs? Would it shock you if you fired him? Because it wouldn't actually for me. Because Roseman
if
tends
they
to
go down to Tampa and lose, which
Yeah.
is what it's set up to do, if they go down to Tampa and lose, I do think all bets are off there because regardless, they're changing coordinators again, both of them.
Right. Yes,
Either way.
Exactly.
They're changing coordinators again.
Yeah.
And they stink of a team that's going to go out quickly no matter who they play. So, boy, things change, don't they?
They still have a great roster, though, so Roseman will get somebody or get the proper person in
They
here.
look different, though. I think Kelsey may retire. Lane Johnson may retire. So that's a different offensive line.
Sure.
So we'll see. All right, we'll see.
Yeah.
I'll get into Hal and all the stuff from the game the other day in a little bit. I do want to start with college football because the games were just amazing yesterday. Alabama losing to Michigan. It was a heavyweight fight. That was a great game. I loved seeing Connor Stallions in the crowd. That was really amazing. That was
just
incredible.
Came across in the last hour, right?
Yeah.
Nicole Auerbach had that.
Yeah. Jim Harbaugh is Jim Harbaugh as you can be. He won't answer questions.
Doesn't answer any questions.
It appears as if he's never had a social interaction with anybody on the face of the earth.
Right.
But for some reason, those guys play for him like nothing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
This is probably a story for the next week, but let's see. It was about 10 years ago that the Harbaugh brothers played each other in the Super Bowl. Their teams played each other. Ravens beat the 49ers. And here we are some 10 years later. And one is the 1 seed in the AFC, still in the same spot. The other one has a really crazy route to Michigan and is going to play for the national championship in the same calendar month.
Yep.
That's pretty wild. Amongst sibling things that have happened in sports, it is amongst the most wild things ever. I'd put this up with the Williams sisters playing each other in Wimbledon, that the two of them at the same time are dominant at the highest levels of the sport at the exact same time.
Yep.
And it's been going on for a long time, not unlike the Williams sisters. It's never been a one-off. It's been going on for a very long time. And I do wonder with Harbaugh, because he's being so cagey and because everyone found out he hired an NFL agent.
Right.
We all are assuming he's going to the NFL after this. And do you totally dismiss here for him? Because I don't totally dismiss him. I don't think it's Belichick. I really don't. I'm pretty good authority that it's not going to be Belichick here. But him, I don't put that 100% out of the realm at this point.
It's a low percentage, but it's a percentage. And
it's
not
definitely
zero.
a percentage.
It's not zero.
I don't think. Yeah, I don't think it's zero. I think Belichick is I don't see it. I really don't see it. The way they're going, the way they're talking, the people they're looking at. Belichick's not going to work for anybody.
Right.
Right. He's going to be in control of it, and that's why I never thought that he would be the choice here. Harbaugh, I didn't feel like it, but at this point, just if you're talking about getting people to rally around you, play for your coach, having success at multiple places. I can't totally dismiss the idea that they wouldn't at least talk to him. So I wonder.
I think there's a point here too. Is look at the pedigree of the players that are their best players, and it's Allen, Payne, McLaurin, 2 from Alabama, 1 from Ohio State.
Yeah.
That means something to them, I'm sure. Like, it's not
Maybe.
going to go over as many people's heads, I think, maybe in that locker room as maybe some other locker rooms. But I'm just saying maybe it's the right motivator there. I don't.
They have talked to these players that you're talking about, Allen and McLaurin, the ownership group has, about many things about the facilities and things like that. And just how do we make your life better? How do we get you a winning culture and all that stuff? Would they include them in a conversation of what do you think of Jim Harbaugh? And I don't know if they would go that far. That would be kind of a little out of sorts to ask those two specifically.
Right.
Also, both of them have said very cagey things about their future. Allen, we know, publicly said on the Junkies a couple weeks ago, I 1,000% have thought about going somewhere else. Right. He couched it with, I'd like to win here, but he also said, I don't want to go through a rebuild, which is what this is. I don't know how I would describe this yet. I don't feel like it necessarily needs to be if they play their cards right in what will be a really wild offseason with a new front office, new head coach, all that cap room, an extremely high draft pick, and what I think is a better roster than their record actually indicates. So I don't know that I'm not going to sit there and go, oh, they're going to flip it around in a year. But in talking about the Eagles and kind of the little bit of disarray that they're in, let's see how they handle it. And Dallas that has a cap problem coming up here pretty soon, especially with Dak's renegotiation again. The door's kind of open in the next couple of years to be on the right side of it if you play your cards really right here. So I don't know. And then McLaurin, I don't know if you heard his thing the other day, but he did say something about being envious of what San Francisco has going organizationally, where they seem to have all their ducks in a row, and I want to play for something that's lined up like this and annually has a shot to win, and we'll see what happens with them. And that was the first time I've heard him ever say anything that was, I don't know if negative about this organization, but just more like this is my lot in life right now, and I'm not sure I want it to be my lot in life in perpetuity. And he's also closing in on 30 and probably starting to think about where can I go to win, and he may be feeling, and he's doing it in a less, outward way, but he did say it. So, I'm hoping both of them are back, obviously, because I think that they are kind of pillars of the team, no matter who the coach is and whoever's the decision makers. But it will be interesting to hear how they feel about everything over the next month when we find out who's actually making decisions about things. So we got to monitor both of them. I don't think Payne's going anywhere. He's in the second year of this extension. You can't get rid of everybody, but Allen, who's at the point where you'd have to talk about renegotiating anyway, and McLaurin, who you're close to at the point of talking about renegotiating with anyway, will be two players that are going to be very much, I want to watch and see what happens here. I'd like to see Terry play his whole career here personally. I went up to him in the locker room and told him how many yards he needs to get 1,000 because he could be, it's 54, he could be the first ever receiver in the franchise's history to get 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons. A franchise that includes Charlie Taylor, Art Monk, Bobby Mitchell, Gary Clark, Santana Moss, like Hall of Fame great receivers. And so I'd like to see him do that. So I'm hoping that a bug gets in the offensive in EB's ear. Let's get some catches to him early. I'd like to see him make this mark against Dallas. That would be really great for him. And I do hope that he's one of those guys that I want to see his name up in the Ring of Honor. And I think he's been such a great player for them that I don't want to see him go anywhere. But him saying that, and it might just have been a little bit of frustration, and they haven't won in 2 months.
Right.
And we all see the writing on the wall of what's coming here. It is a concern to me that he's going to ask, and I hope that doesn't happen. I don't want to put words in his mouth.
To be fair on that, though,
to,
like, who do we always name as the most successful organizations? It's them, it's the Eagles, and I wouldn't really put Ravens, but I wouldn't put anyone else in that tier, really. Like, we talk about all the time.
They're consistently good and always kind of there.
Well,
Pittsburgh's one of these two. Pittsburgh, they're always right there. When they have a really good roster, they're dangerous. And even when they don't, like now, they have a marginal roster with average quarterback play, they might make the playoffs anyway. It's every year with them.
Yeah, but with the Niners, it's lockstep. It's like Shanahan and Lynch know exactly what to expect from the other. And here's the other thing. Washington has become so dependent on they need to hit that first-round pick. They need to hit every single thing for a roster to go right. The Niners traded all of the draft picks for Trey Lance, and we're fine without it. Now, can they do that again? I doubt it. But that's the organization that they are, and I think that's where McLaurin's going with is it's all business for every decision that gets made, and we all are kind of pulling the same rope here, whereas here it's Ron making every single decision top to bottom, seemingly, and I think what he's getting at there is it would just be nice to have an organization that seems like everyone's in lockstep with each other.
Yeah.
And I think I look at it more as that's him going, I hope the next regime is kind of more lockstep like they are, as opposed to him wanting to leave. That's what I would think.
Yeah. After hearing him say it, though, I'd like to just ask him a follow-up. What do you mean by that?
Yep, right.
And he may get that after the Dallas game.
But
he may get that.
I also think the other part of this, too, is the Niners have not only drafted really well, been really smart with their re-signings. They also haven't been afraid to make these trades, too. Like, they made the McCaffrey trade. They traded for Chase Young. Like, they've made these trades mid-season. They haven't been afraid to do it. And I think that also falls in line with what Terry's going here is when you are competitive, you get to make those moves and excite everybody by doing that instead of what they did this year, which was trade Chase Young and trade Montez Sweat and, sign marginal free agents. I think what he's getting at here is like it's nice to be able to go for it because you make those moves and you keep the roster kind of upheaved.
Yeah, of those three teams too, unless for some reason A.J. Brown was going to be moved and they have Devontae Smith, they wouldn't be in the market to try to acquire someone like him because he makes too much money. And in San Francisco's case, Brandon Ayuk's having an outstanding year. They're going to have to pay him. They've already paid Deebo Samuel. It's not a fit for him either. Same reason why Chase Young won't be there next year. There's just not enough money for him to go around with all the contracts that they've paid. But the one up the street where they're always kind of looking for receiver help, that would frighten me a little bit. But I just, again, he'd have to be traded. And the idea of trading that person to that organization seems preposterous to me. So I hope he's just saying I'd like to see a little better stability in place here to give us a chance to win and not I'd rather go somewhere else. Because Allen outwardly said, I thought about going.
The other thing with Baltimore is we can get into the Ravens more, but I watched most of that game flicking back and forth. There's a take that I like, actually, that people have been kind of floating out there, that Lamar is actually better without Mark Andrews, and it's that because he's not forcing the ball to him. So Flowers is getting the ball, Odell Beckham's getting the ball, Isaiah Likely now all of a sudden, you and I know that he's good, but now everybody's like, oh, this guy's making all these crazy catches. Well, he's not forcing the ball.
I saw it last year in the preseason. I'm like, these guys have two pass-catching tight ends.
Right. So just on that front, I don't think the Ravens are actually going to make any more moves with what they've got because he now seemingly is seeing
Beckham may or may not be there next year.
Sure, but then they sign whoever the next veteran wide receiver is, and they probably have a nice combo with him and Flowers.
That's not paying him $30 million
Correct.
a year.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's what Terry's going to get. So I think Terry here is probably kind of locked in here. And I would think that, of all the things he's represented, been here, I think the hope would be to keep him. And I wouldn't want to move on from him, but I want to hear, because it's the first time I've ever heard him kind of shade away from the idea of I'm Commanders through and through. And I just want to hear what he means. Still,
he wasn't wrong with what he was saying too. No, San Francisco has been a perennial contender for
in the same way I would say like Allen wasn't wrong in what he said. It was just the way he said it. Sure. And, he's a captain and he's supposed to be part of the answer. And he was part of the group. Did you hear Chase Young's comment too after the game?
No.
Where he said, I could play freely here because every time we lost, the D-line was blamed for it. So now the blame gets shared around if we do lose a game here, like the Ravens game the other night. So he said that, and it's, you're going to complain about being the number 2 overall pick and being asked to be for first-round pick group and asked to be part of the group that's supposed to change things. Like that bothered you? Like, what, you can't handle the pressure?
You're
the second overall pick.
They were all first-round picks. Like, right. 2 of them were paid already. And, I don't know.
You guys actually all lived up to, personally, expectation. You of the 4 are the one that didn't quite reach the potential, but still collectively we looked at your group and said, this is the best part of our team. Were we not supposed to believe that?
Right, exactly.
Since when? If Pat Mahomes gets the blame when the Chiefs lose because he's Pat Mahomes.
Yeah, right.
Whether that's fair or not. You're the second overall pick on a unit with 4 first-round picks, 3 of which are performing at extremely high levels, all got $100 million contracts. Right. We're not supposed to look at you and go, why aren't you winning the games?
Right, exactly.
Anyway. All right, let me go back to the college football stuff. First, before I get to the 2 semifinal games, I have to talk about Florida State for a minute.
Yep.
That was embarrassing.
They were missing 20 players, though.
Okay. And who do we blame for that?
That's a good question because I don't know who we blame for that.
Okay. So the system's messed up, obviously.
Yeah.
It goes in this situation. Georgia's players did show up and play.
Right.
With a few exceptions. I think Brock Bowers did not play in the game. He's going to be a very high draft pick. But most of them played.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
They're in the same boat that Florida State was.
Sure.
Why'd they play?
That's a good question.
And, for all the people who are like, well, and I saw a lot of people write, well, if they got in the playoff, those guys would have played. Okay.
Right.
Why's that?
Because the game would have mattered.
So they didn't feel a responsibility to the school or the program to play in the game to prove everybody wrong.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't feel the responsibility to do
absolutely.
that at all.
And I don't blame them for that.
I do.
I don't.
I mean, if you're so aggrieved by all of this and you really want to prove a point, why don't you go beat one of the teams that also got snubbed by the College Football Playoff Committee, but your group collectively decided not to do that.
That's in their own.
You did it in mass.
It's in their own interest, though. I mean, it's every individual player's. they're up to do whatever they want to do.
Sure. I hate the system too. I think it stinks. It ruined that game.
Yeah.
Like that was supposed to be the.
It was, yeah.
And now all it is Georgia, as my feeling was the real snubbed team.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't even get a real gauge of it because that wasn't Florida State's team that played.
Right. Correct.
And I don't know. I'm sitting there kind of going, I don't know. You don't feel like on any level whatsoever that you guys had something to prove. It was one more game. That's it. Against a team that also got snubbed. You were put in a position to prove to everybody that you were aggrieved and snubbed and wronged. And instead, you just turned your back on the whole thing and said, we don't owe you anything. We're out of here. And it's fine. That's but I'm just, to me, it's just like, well, that just tells me a lot about your program. Well, like, if your guys don't really care about the respect that your program receives, then why should I respect it?
The follow-up for that is for what? So we all pat them on the back and say good effort on Monday or Tuesday?
If you want to have we are truly, they could have pulled this. If they had somehow won, they could have pulled we also are the national champion. And it wouldn't have been true, but they could have lived that forever. Now they can't even do that. Now they were boat raced by a team because they decided not to show up, which reads to me a little bit like they were scared to play in the game. That they actually didn't want to be in it.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, this is happening all across the country now. Like, these are
basically... I hear you, but Georgia's players played. Sure. That's the weird part. Like, that was the majority of their team actually played in that game. They could have pulled the exact same thing.
Right.
And they didn't.
And if we want to believe SEC message boards, it means they were getting a little extra money. So I'm just saying, maybe we start making I
mean, is this where we are in general, that everybody has to get paid to show up to play in the bowl games?
So.
Probably.
Absolutely. When you look at how much money's flowing through the sport, like, I don't blame these players for a lot of it.
Yeah, they're like Pop-Tarts.
Yeah.
Spend a little less on the fake toaster and give it to our defensive lineman because he wants to play in the game.
Here's what I think actually needs to happen. For the major bowl games that aren't the college football playoffs, I think we just need to go full Pro Bowl. And there's a pot, and it's if you win, each player gets this much, and if you lose, you get this much. But you have to play.
You have to play,
absolutely. Like, this is like...
You don't get a share if you don't dress.
To the junior quarterback that is being drafted and doesn't want to play, he can forego the $50,000 or whatever the pot money is.
Right.
And that's his own choice. But I think what needs to happen here is what is the dollar amount that it is worth some of these guys to play in one extra game that, frankly, like I said, just doesn't matter, honestly, in the grand pantheon of things.
Yeah, it doesn't. But it just, I don't know. In this particular case where they are suing the NCAA and crying foul and saying we're better than you gave us credit for. We should have been in that Final Four. To no show,
right?
It reads to me a little bit like you were scared to prove people right.
Right.
That's what it actually read to me. Like, the Georgia guys showed up. Why'd they show up? Because they were paid. Okay, what the Florida State players weren't.
I don't know. I can't.
They're NIL? What are you talking about? It's a big brand team. Like, what, they didn't get money to play this year? Of course they did. Like, why are they good again?
I mean, the other part is, you know how this works, too. I'm sure it was probably a snowball effect. I'm sure one or two players or three players started to decide they weren't going to play, and then that snowballs. You know how that goes. And not only that, look at the outside of the program, like you just said. They're suing the NCAA. All of a sudden, they have sour grapes. And so I'm guessing that is basically what happened, too. It was a snowball effect. It was X, Y, and Z aren't going to play, so then I'm not going to play. Then that trickles down to, like I said, 20 or 30 players, whatever the actual number was. Because then what it was, too, is it wasn't just like the second stringers were playing. It was like the third and fourth stringers were playing, which isn't fair to anybody because they haven't played most of the year. But I think it's what happened is, look at how the program treated it. Like, had FSU come out right away and said, this sucks, we hate the decision, but we're going to go and try to beat Georgia.
Prove you wrong.
Right.
We're going to prove it. This is that's where I stood on it. I'm like, go prove everybody wrong. If you actually go beat Georgia, then you're going to prove a lot of people wrong, and you're going to sit there and be able to pound your chest and say, you guys messed up. But by doing what they did collectively and then getting destroyed, though predictably, because of the team they put out there, you don't even have that anymore.
Right. I mean,
so it's like, I don't even want to hear it from them on any level whatsoever. But because, you played a team that also got snubbed, and you lost 63-3. So what am I supposed to think that you were wrong? Now you weren't. You officially are not wronged anymore. Well, it turns out the committee was right, because look what happened.
I'm not going to go that far, because it wasn't the same team. It wasn't the same team they would have played.
That's their fault.
Right. But what I'm getting at is it still all would have been for what? Because at the end of the day, everyone gets re-ranked going into next year anyways. And if they have a bunch of guys playing, their ranking's going to reflect that. And guess what? Mostly everyone today is talking about the other two games that happened last night and not talking about them because it happened on a Saturday night and we're in a long weekend. I see the calculated decision here, and I don't blame them, is all I'm saying. I understand where you're coming from in that, yeah, we don't know what to make of these bowl games, and I forget who was talking about it. The Georgia head coach was talking about it afterwards, just saying.
He's like, this is a bad situation.
It was just like, we need to decide what these are. And I actually agree with him there, though.
We need to decide what these are.
We do need to, I think, for the major bowl games where like those types of teams are playing, you need to incentivize them, and I think that's where we're at.
It's the only one of all the ones that weren't the semifinals that really mattered.
Yes.
Because this was the one where you could have made an argument the playoffs should have been 6 teams deep, but it wasn't because of their own rule. So the 2 teams who got snubbed got put up against one another purposefully. Yeah. Of course it was. It was purposefully. So it was meant to be here's the team that really got snubbed. And we don't even get that answer because Georgia beats a team that wasn't Florida State all year.
Right. It's not them. Yeah.
It's not them. But I blame them for that. They're the ones that rolled that roster out there. So, like, they did not, convince their players that it was necessary to play. What's that say about their program? Like, what's that say about you and what you're saying to your team and what the pride of the program is? You couldn't convince your players to play in the game?
Right.
Oh, like, come on. Like, Brock Bowers was hurt all year, and he's going to be a very high draft pick. I understand his thinking.
Right.
But like the majority of the Georgia players, and a number of them are going to be drafted, did play. Why? I guess it mattered to them for some reason to play in the game. Florida State didn't feel that way.
Yeah.
So now I don't even want to hear it from them because like you guys don't care enough.
Here's what's going to happen.
You don't care enough to make a point.
This isn't even going to be a subject next year though, because they're going to be that game would have been part of the playoff, right?
I hope they go undefeated again and get snubbed again. That would be just amazing.
that's probably not going to happen.
That's what I hope.
What are the still the major 4? It's Orange Bowl, Sugar Bowl, Rose Bowl. What's the 4th one I'm missing? Fiesta Bowl. Really, what they should have done going into these years, what the bowls that aren't actually used in the college football playoff need to become the money bowls. That essentially, those are the ones where you pool the money together. Winners get X amount of dollars, losers get X amount of dollars to make sure it stays competitive. And really what they needed to do was come up with a way to call it a consolation game. And then that way you get all these big sponsors going and you really make a big deal out of it. But basically what happened, though, is knowing what Florida State did, everyone knew going into it, they were going to get boat raced. I don't know if everyone thought it was going to be a near 60-point loss, but that's what they needed to do. Now you don't have to worry about it, though, because that's not going to happen next year, most likely.
As for the other 2, the Alabama-Michigan game was a classic.
That was awesome.
It was awesome. It was a classic.
Front to back, fantastic game.
Milroe made a number of mistakes down the stretch.
Yep.
It's probably the main reason why they ended up losing. Michigan's punt returner is the luckiest person on earth.
All their special teams.
Luckiest person
Every
on
single
earth.
thing that could go wrong on special teams.
He fumbled the ball inside his own 5.
Yes.
He's so lucky he got that back, or he would have been the GOAT of all GOATs.
Correct. Right. Every single thing that could go wrong with special teams went wrong. They had terrible punting. They had terrible returning. Their snapper, Michigan snapper there.
We won't draft him this time.
Yeah, let's not draft that one. All his snaps started getting high on field goals, like to the point where I was saying, does Harbaugh go for it at the end there? Luckily, they didn't, and they were fine in overtime. But everything went wrong for them on special teams, and they still overcame it, which is like, it tells you how good they are, because usually you don't get
They got
that
a real defense.
You don't get that against Saban. Saban...
Agreed.
Saban, like every other team, is beating that team because of the mistakes alone.
Yeah, that's right. They went toe-to-toe with them. That was a great game. Second one was a boat race. I figured it. I don't think Washington's defense is all that great, but Penix is just outstanding. And I'll say what I said about C.J. Stroud last year at the same time, and I said this about Penix. He just made himself a lot of money last night.
Yep.
I watched him throughout the year. I was a little confused. I went to go see him when we played Seattle and Washington was home. I went because I'd never been to that stadium, and I wanted to see him play. He was the Heisman front runner at the time, and he played Utah, and Utah was still very competitive, and he threw a bunch of dimes in that game too. And all year long, I watch this guy, and I'm like, this dude, he is accurate, like crazy, crazy accurate. And I'm still confused how he was never the Heisman frontrunner by the end of it. They were undefeated. He had an unbelievable season.
Beat Oregon twice.
Oregon twice. I don't know exactly. I mean, I guess that Daniels guy's numbers were just so outrageous that they ended up giving it to him. But of all the big games, big moments, this is the guy that kept showing up, and it was his arm that was doing it. And I didn't understand how he kind of fell off as the front runner, but whatever. He made himself a lot of money last night. Now, the question is, how much? Is he now the third quarterback to be picked? Is someone going to fall in love and make him the second? I doubt it. Is he going to be a second-round pick now? Is he going to be a low first-round pick now? I don't know. Probably will matter what happens in this national championship game, because if they go and beat Michigan and he throws for 400 yards again, 3 touchdowns and no picks or something like that, he's going to have really made himself a lot of money. And then we're going to be in a really funny situation with him, because people are going to start going, I don't know. Like, how do you overlook the results? And he's something. And if people are going to talk about his knee injuries and all the moving around and all this stuff, I don't know, man. This is somebody who's played a lot of college football. That is a program that doesn't typically get in a position like this. He's the main reason why they are where they are. It's him making enormous, crazy dime throws at critical moments doing it. And the end, of course, was just amazing, too.
Right.
That they put 1 second back on the clock was my favorite thing on earth. I'm like, please put it back on the clock.
Yeah,
because you got this one play, and the world has to stop for that moment to see what happens.
I do think it's funny. Both games really came down to the defensive line just shoving at the last play of the game, and that's pretty much what won the game for their respective games. Like Michigan's defensive line was killing the Alabama offensive line pretty much the entire game, and then in the other one, Washington's defensive line completely collapsed to one side that he had to rush the throw, and it was nowhere to be found.
We'll have to see what the draft people think of Penix, because I would assume he's a first-round pick now, but let's just say he's not. Okay, and let's just see where Washington lands in the draft, right? And let's just say that the Bears do take Caleb Williams because they just take him, and they're just not going to be open to taking, someone else. We have 2 second-round picks pretty high.
Yep.
I mean, he, to me, is a fallback option for them, if it falls that low. If his stock now rises like crazy because, people are realizing that the games matter and he shows up in the big games, then maybe we should take a better look at him. He'll probably be a first-round pick. But if he somehow is early in the second round and we just can't acquire Caleb Williams, which is what I think this team will try to do based on our draft position, then I don't know. That's an interesting fallback option. He might be like the Hendon Hooker of this year, where he goes a little lower than he probably should. Pressure's a little bit off because he's not picked that high. You bring Hal back and you let them compete with one another.
Yep.
I think that's a possibility here. I'm guessing, and this is without knowing because we don't have our front office intact here, and we have to see where we're picking. Like if we're picking number 2, I think we're taking a quarterback, and I think we'll take a hardcore rush at 1 just to make sure we get Caleb Williams. Personally, that's if the Bears don't take him. But if we fall to 3. And those first 2 quarterbacks are gone, and we don't get either one of them, then it will be interesting to see how this team thinks about it with those 2 high second-round picks to go, maybe we can wait it out and land on Penix. Well, and if we do, then we have a good competition going into the spring where we have a rookie quarterback. We got another guy that I'm not totally down on. I think this has been a terrible end of the season for Sam, but turn it around with a new coordinator. He's not making any money. Like, take your time. Like, you don't have to go crazy about the whole thing, and let's see.
Yeah. I mean, who also says no to them drafting either the Penn State or the Notre Dame tackle and then walking out with Penix and with one of the second-round picks, or you trade both of them and move up? Like, that could be a possibility as well. But I think if you're asking
or someone may want Marvin Harrison so bad that they give you a crazy offer for him.
Correct, exactly. So I think, like, that's the other thing here is you think you can get one of the stud players and then still grab him in the second round, which I don't know is going to happen. But either way, like end of the first round here, you have the ammo to go ahead and do that and still get your tackle, because I think nobody's going to turn down getting one of those tackles for the last 10 years.
I don't think so.
For the next 10 years, I mean.
All right, I'll take a quick break. We'll go over Sam Howell being forced to play over the weekend next. Bram, watch the show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. Callow gave me a lovely Christmas present that includes the soundtrack from my favorite movie of all time, Goodfellas. This is one of my favorite songs that is played in the movie. It's the helicopter scene when Ray Liotta and Karen are driving around, and they're pretty sure that helicopters are following them because they're doing drug deals, which the mob told them they shouldn't be doing in the first place. You got to stay away from the junk.
That's right.
But they meet the guys from Pittsburgh in the motel anyway, and the helicopters are actually following them, which then leads Ray Liotta to become the all-time rat and rat out all the guys and send them back to jail so he can go scot-free.
That's correct.
And he lives, he has to get sent off and have a new name and the whole thing.
That's right. And he waves to the camera at the end.
It's not on the soundtrack.
Which I had to tell you, because they're not all on there.
They're not all on there.
You could imagine that soundtrack probably cost a lot of money to put all of those songs on.
Rolling Stones' Monkey Man is also in the movie, also didn't make the soundtrack, but the cover's so incredible with Robert De Niro, Ray Liotta, and Joe Pesci on it as the Goodfellas. So I might just hang it up. I might have to just hang that up on the wall. I might go in the Zoom room in the background.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
Yeah, it's a great ad. Thank you for my present.
Of course,
he also bought me a T-shirt of Christian Bale from American Psycho, which if anyone who listens to the show knows is another one of my favorite movies of all time, and it might be one of the best characters ever played ever.
Yes.
Where what's his name of his? I can't remember
his
the name.
Friend.
No, what's his name in the movie?
What's
his name?
Hold on, give me 2 seconds.
It also that comes with also my second favorite all-time weird scene, which is he gets so upset about his colleague Patrick Bateman.
Yeah.
He gets so upset with his partner's business cards and how much they're that much better than his. The font, the corners, everything. He gets so upset about it that he ends up having to kill somebody that night because he's so mad about it.
The shirt, though, is when he has the coworker over, Paul Allen, who's Jared Leto, by the way.
Yeah.
or Jared Leto plays him, but it's when he has the CD in his hand and he says, "Do you like Huey Lewis in the news?"
Yeah.
And so it's like a faded picture of him, but the CD you can see perfectly fine.
Yes, it's a great,
I'm always worried.
best Christmas present I think.
I'm always worried to buy you a shirt because I know you're very particular, and I saw that, and I knew it was a risk, but I knew it didn't say American Psycho on it. There wasn't anything violent on it. It's just him holding a CD.
This is a perfect shirt for me to wear to a poker room.
There you go. Perfect.
Because it's one of those, anybody who looks at me and then gets it is going to be like, that guy's nuts.
Right. Correct. Exactly.
And the other people who don't get it are just going to be like, what is that?
It's like, it's not worth explaining. It's not worth explaining
I'm not
if you
gonna
haven't seen
explain
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Why would I explain that? This is American Psycho. Yeah. Right. Do you like the song Susudio?
Yeah.
Let's start doing that.
Right. Exactly.
All right. So over the weekend, predictably, the Commanders lost to a very, very good team. The defense profiled a lot of people who really are not expected to play this year. Almost the entire secondary was makeshift. Quan Martin actually played pretty well again.
Yes.
He's actually been the one that's kind of the rookies, has really turned.
Yes.
And he had a weird day. And Rivera warned me about this. He goes, keep an eye on him. He goes, we're having him play 2 positions this week.
Okay.
He said he's going to be playing nickel and safety at times. So we're asking a lot of him. And he, again, had a very good day.
Yep.
So of the draft picks that we've complained about throughout the year, he's the one that's kind of emerged here. It looks like kind of like, oh, all right, I see it now with him. He's kind of like Swiss Army knife. They can move him around. Seems to throw his head into a lot of different plays. So that was pretty good. But the corner situation was rough. And then the defensive line is, jarring. They can't get any pressure on anybody anymore because, well, one of them's playing for San Francisco. The other one's playing for Chicago now. So that one was that. And then on the other side, we had the bomb surprise on Friday that Jacoby Brissett suddenly had a hamstring injury. And then I was out there at the field. I watched him work out, and I think we all knew what was coming. They did a long workout, and he walked off like somebody who wasn't going to play, and then they had a long conversation, and then Sam Howell was named the starter. And so he was, I think as he said in his own press conference afterwards, he said, I knew I had to play, which was an interesting way of putting that.
Yeah.
And I actually thought he was fine.
Mm-hmm.
It really wasn't like it was the previous couple of weeks.
Picks came at the end, too.
Picks came at the end.
They had to get something going, and they didn't.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, neither one were great, obviously. This is the second time, or not second time, this is like multiple times this year. The corners just run to spots where he's throwing the ball.
Yep.
So I really feel like that there's a lot more here than just Sam Howell. I think there's a lot of self-scouting that seems to need to happen when he's out there, because the ball goes exactly where players think it's going to go, and it just gets into trouble. The killer was the one in the red zone, obviously. The last one was the nail in the coffin, but like the killer was the one in the red zone. Largely, though, I didn't think he played that poorly, and the instincts that I saw that led to the benching in the first place, the feeling pressure that isn't there, putting his head down, realizing it's not there, then running backwards and stuff like that, and chucking it up into the middle of the field. I didn't see any of that this time, so I actually felt better about him. Albeit against a team that I think we all knew they were going to lose to. It was just a matter of what the final score was going to be. And honestly, I talked to Mark Schlereth. He called the game before he came on the pregame show. I saw him on the field. And I said, what do you think? And he goes, what do you think? And I said, no comment. And he goes, I predict bloodbath. And I go, yeah.
Right.
Like, how bad is this going to be? How bad is it going to be? So when it was 13-10 at half, I was like, you know what? That's a win, honestly. With the defense that we had put out there personnel-wise, and him having to go out there and play, I was like, I don't know what's going to happen here. And I was actually pleasantly surprised that I thought he really kind of played relatively well, all things considered.
It was almost, on the overall feel in the first half, too, it was almost like they failed in the red zone, had to kick a couple field goals, but because their drives took up so much time, the score just wasn't indicative of really how much they were dominating that first half. At least that's how I felt. But 13-0, it was like, okay, that's fine. Like, I think all of us would have taken that, if the game actually mattered. And it was a matter of time in the second half when they were just going to pull away with a couple of scores, and they literally did that. So,
this seems to happen. Brian Robinson was running the ball really well, and then it just
started, man. I can't even get mad about it.
I can't not complain about it.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, it's not in my constitution to not complain about it. Like, this was a foregone conclusion going in, and I knew that. And I actually think the score was indicative of how much better they are than them, but it wasn't Florida State, Georgia, which I thought it could be.
Right.
I think we all had a fear of, they still have to win and they get a 1 seed or whatever if they catch a break. So they're just going to steamroll these guys. And it actually didn't happen that way.
Right.
So I actually felt better about the whole thing. And the final score was just the final score. And they didn't get what I thought would be thoroughly embarrassed. That didn't happen. And so I walked away going, that's as good as I could ask.
You're right.
Honestly. The state that they're in, it's the best I could have asked for. Today, Rivera was asked a lot about culture and what do you leave behind. All of the, precipice to we think we know what's happening in a week from now.
Yeah, right, correct.
And I think we all do know what's happening a week from now. None of his answers are going to make you feel any real better about anything because he's getting asked about all the key mark quotes that he brings in, like change the culture. Did you change the culture?
Right.
Well, maybe. I don't know.
Questionable.
Not in wins and losses, he didn't.
Correct. Right.
Did you change the culture in terms of team to be proud of? I think that largely had to do with the ownership.
I think we could have asked that last year
office.
and then go to this year and it's a different answer.
Yeah, I mean, like, how do you define culture at this point? I guess is really the question here. Like, is it wins and losses? Because he failed, if that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's just we have a group that we're not, turning our head away from because we're scared to watch them, not totally embarrassed by it and don't feel ashamed to watch. Well, then I guess he did accomplish that, but it really largely changed when Dan Snyder sold the team because that's what needed to happen for really all of that to occur. So I don't think he's not going to be able to give a satisfactory answer, and he probably knows that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. Like,
how's he? I mean, it's a trap question. You're going to ask him this, but he also used the word so many times that he hangs himself with it.
Yeah, correct. There's nothing he can say that would flip people's opinion on him at this point, and that's mainly because of just how bad the season has gone.
The season was really bad. The roster was mismanaged. The decision making in game often has been lacking.
Yeah.
And then he hired Bieniemy to come here. I don't think Bieniemy's been a bad influence whatsoever. I think he's been a good influence, but like the offense is not some great shakes. Like that didn't overly change overnight. He's the one who's picked the quarterbacks each and every one of these years, and in each of those cases, none of it's worked.
Right. The one year he didn't, he backed into the playoffs with the quarterbacks that were on the roster.
Well, that's right.
So,
he didn't really want to play Alex Smith, and I understand why, but he ended up having to play him, and then he did, and it kept him alive, and then he had to turn to Heineke, and Heineke saved his hide, and there was a bad year, and then second year was, I don't know, it's hard to blame him. I mean, Fitzpatrick got hurt in week one, so it's just kind of hard to know. But then he picked Wentz and he picked Howell. And, I don't know, we'll have to do the full autopsy on Howell at the end of all of this by the end of it. Because they're, in the middle of the season, I would have told you, I thought this is going about as good as it possibly could go. Mm-hmm. But you need to play a whole year. And it got really long on him. And even this past week, I mean, the look on his face at this press conference was like, I wasn't expecting to go. And he's probably unaccustomed to having a record like this, too. I think this happens to some pro athletes when they're in a situation like this. They don't even know how to react to it. They're just not used to it.
Right.
And that's probably him a little bit.
It's probably
He's
why
not used to this.
It's probably why Hal played a little bit better because he just didn't know he was going to be going, and then he's kind of like, "Well, F it, I wasn't supposed to be playing anyway." It's probably cleared his head a little bit. You kind of react to certain situations. I'm sure he was kind of just more reactive to it, and
maybe
he wasn't seeing ghosts.
But what I didn't see was he wasn't just winging it.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
he still
100%.
Played within the system.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So he still was willing to do exactly what he was told to do on these plays. There was a period with Heineke, he was a far more seasoned player because he'd been around the block a million times, where I think by the middle of it, we're like, just let him be him for crying out loud.
Right.
Like he plays better if he's kind of off the cuff a little bit. Let him do his thing and let's see how it works out. Let's try to protect him in that. With Hal, it's all been about learn this system, do this way, do this that way. And the second he walks in there, corners are standing in lanes where the ball is going as they know what he's going to do.
Right.
So I kind of feel for him. I feel like he's in a tough spot. So the autopsy on him is not complete, but it clearly is cascaded down the wrong way. And I often feel like, most of the time it's the whole situation needs to be set up for, winning. And it's just not, unfortunately, right now. It's just they've made a lot of bets. They've all gone wrong on them. Some of them are of their own making. Some of them are a little bit of bad luck. And some of it also is messaging. I've talked about this last week. I don't like some of the thematic messaging that has occurred throughout the years. Sure. And then when you do get asked today, like, what's your answer about the culture now? Well, you're the one that kept bringing that up over and over. That was your message that you were changing that. Did you? I mean, I don't know whether he did or he did. I don't know what the answer is to that. I do know by wins and losses that didn't happen.
Right. I mean, I think you can make the argument, like, as we started the show with, today is the literal 4-year anniversary of his introductory press conference. And it goes without saying, we don't have to name all the off-the-field stuff, but I think on the field, they are in the same or worse position. I think that's where I'm at with them. They're not better. Like, I can definitively say they're not better on the field in the last 4 years.
No, they're not.
And you can tell me, you can nitpick. If they're the same, I'll hear you out. If they're worse, absolutely
they're not. The
we'll
record's the same.
Yeah, right. So
the same thing happened last year. James, same thing. He was around 500 every single year.
Right.
He had a lot more Michigas going on, obviously. Some of it was of his own making.
Right.
Right. But like most of it wasn't. But some of it was.
Mm-hmm.
Like he also was one of the kids in the frat house. It wasn't like he wasn't.
Right.
Like, I don't want to sit here and pretend like he was the responsible adult.
Oh,
he
of course.
wasn't. He was doing keg stands too.
A little more than that. But
yeah. But the same thing happened. Like they had 500 or sometimes a little bit better records, but right around 500. And then the last year it all totally tumbled. And
right.
That's what happened here. They were just kind of hanging around, competitive, had some interesting moments and good spots here. And they're, under Jay, the offense was pretty good for a couple of years. Under Ron, the defense was pretty good for a couple of years. But when it ended with a bad thud.
Correct.
Jay started terrible, 0-5 or whatever it was. This one, they haven't won in 2 months.
Right. Yep. Exactly.
And typically Rivera time is October, November.
Right. It didn't even come.
That didn't even happen this time.
The other part about this too is, like we talked last segment, how McLaurin has talked about another organization. Allen said, he thinks about it 1,000 times about playing for another organization. I don't recall Jay really ever having a problem with major players. It was minor players like DJ Swearinger and a couple other like minor players, but I don't ever remember Trent Williams saying it or Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins always said the right thing. Like maybe that's an individual player thing or a compete thing, but we never had the franchise cornerstones talking about other teams and franchises either.
Yeah,
that's where I kind of like am landing at its worst today.
Yeah, and we're a week away from we need to ask the hard questions to Allen, McLaurin, and others.
Sure.
Do you want to be here?
Right.
And I'm sure their answers will be, let me see what they do.
Right, exactly.
But, but still, it's a fair question. And to that point, I don't remember that at the end of Jay where people were like, I got to get out of here.
Yes, exactly.
They weren't saying that.
Right.
All right, let me take a quick break. Bram watch the show, ESPN 630 Sports Capital. Former DC United coach Wayne Rooney was fired 15 matches into his Premier League job.
Woof.
That was fast.
Yeah.
Not that I know anything about it, but it was okay.
That's a quick one.
That is a quick one.
That means you probably lost the locker room fast, or you don't know how to communicate with your players.
Apparently.
Is what my guess is.
DC United does have a coach because last time
they
I
don't,
checked,
not officially.
Well,
so he was
fired.
So he was fired before DC United could find their head coach.
He could be like the Billy Martin. He could just bring him back. Just bring him back.
You guys haven't found anybody. I'm available. He did say, I think his quote was he was taking some time off before he's taking the next gig. So
okay. Wizards beat the Nets.
Yes.
Then lost to the Hawks, but a close game at least. So there's that. There's that for that weekend.
The joke, by the way, on Wizards Twitter is I guess they like playing against Dinwiddie.
Because they beat him in Dallas.
Yeah.
That's right. And then he came out and said terrible things about them after.
I want to say they beat him on the Nets last year, too. Like, I think after he got traded. Because remember, he got traded
Is
at the
there anybody
deadline.
even left that was in the locker room with him?
Kuz.
That's it. Right.
It was
Montrez
Kuz.
is gone.
Yeah, everyone else is gone. KCP they traded.
Beal's gone.
Beal's gone. But
everybody's
Kuz.
gone.
It's Kuz, though.
Kuz.
Gafford, I guess. Gafford probably played with him for a little bit.
That's a weird, dumb rivalry.
But I love it. Because everybody...
The Wizards versus Dinwiddie.
My favorite was
stupid.
My favorite was, why do they play so well against Bitcoin Dinwiddie? Because remember he was talking about that? Like,
he was early on that. He turned all his heat for a while there. He was the first one to turn his whole salary into Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if you've checked their stock right now. He's actually doing all right with that one.
Yeah, he's fine. But I just thought it was funny that apparently they like to play against old Spencer, who played here for half a year. It's not even like he was here that long.
God, he has left a mark here.
Yeah,
it doesn't even really make any sense.
Tells you about the franchise.
Yeah. It tells you why they're an also-ran.
Yes.
That this still lingers 2-3 years later. Spencer Dinwiddie? How does it even matter? Why would it matter?
Right.
They pursued him hard and brought him in. Then they voted him off the island, and now they just go, every time they play each other, they get mad at one another. And then people in the Wizards locker room don't even know him.
Correct, yeah.
Stupid.
There's not anyone else that knows him except Kuz.
Because that year happened, Woj wasn't even the coach.
Yeah, correct. It was Brooks.
Even Shanahan's over the Commanders thing now.
No, it was Woj. It was Woj to start off. Yeah, it was. Woj was here. Brooks
right, because that was the that's what I was going. Whose team is this?
Brooks ended the Westbrook tenure.
Right, that was that December. I was like, Beal or Woj, whose team is this?
Right, correct, exactly.
Why isn't anyone running the team?
They started 10-4, and then we thought everything was gravy.
MVP,
and then
Montrezl Harrell.
That's right, and it all fell apart on them. But you have to remember, the only reason I know that is because remember it was my favorite back-to-back clips ever of interviewing the Wizards after they lost to the 76ers.
Yeah.
And they bring in Westbrook, who was set to come back, but then they traded him. They go to Westbrook, and they ask him about Scott Brooks. He's like, Scott's my guy. I love Scott. Scott's great. And then they go to Beal, and Beal's like, we'll talk with Tommy and Ted.
Yeah.
You're going to talk with Tommy and Ted?
Yes. That's right. What do you mean you are?
And then Westbrook was traded
Of course he was.
in November.
That's right.
Anyways.
Let's see. Well, it came out, too, that Beal was the one who went to Wall and basically told him without telling him, we're not bringing you back.
Right, yeah, right.
Beal's like the guy in the NFL training camps that gets people cut. If Beal shows up to your room, you got to give him your playbook.
You got to give him the key card. Yeah,
That's right. So I watched Caps the other day.
Yes.
They got robbed.
Yeah, they did on the Ovechkin goal. Yeah.
Can you explain to me what the call was? Because I still don't understand it. Like, they scored late.
Yes.
They should have won.
Yep.
They called goalie interference. It didn't look like it.
Yes.
So I don't know I don't understand what the call was.
After reading and watching the discourse, what my conclusion is now is we officially have our NHL version of what to catch. It's not being called consistently is the problem. Sometimes these goaltenders are nudged and they don't call it. Like the other night, he's nudged and they do call it. Sometimes it's the other team knocking another guy into their own goaltender, and it's not called. We officially don't know what goalie interference is anymore. Like, if they're brushed, is that now goalie interference? Because I feel like this is what we're going towards, and that's where I've landed now after kind of letting it stew for a couple days.
I wasn't even sure that I saw that the other day.
Like I said, we have no consistent call now anymore on it. So it's like, if they are even nudged, you have to call it now, or do you not call it? Like, it's almost like actually the face mask rule. Remember they used to do the 5-yard version and the 15 yards, and now it's just a 15 yards because they latch on?
Yeah.
I feel like that's what we're at now. It has to be like blatant goalie interference now, in my opinion.
Yeah, I wanted to see Carberry go full Davey and pull out a picture and show it to the media. Because when they kept showing the replay, I was sitting there with Archer, and I'm like, oh, that's going to stand. Don't worry about it. And when they called it off, he was like, what's the call? And I went, I have no idea.
Right, yeah. And Carberry basically just said, I didn't see it. Like their call.
I don't want to get fined.
Well, he was like, I didn't see what they were seeing, is what his basically saying, no, I disagree, but I'm not going to get fined for this.
Neither did I.
Right.
I didn't understand it.
Right.
And the NHL just took an Ovechkin goal off the board.
He's
what
at
are
6
you guys
taken
thinking?
away. 6.
6?
Yeah, I think it was. I don't know if it was this year alone. It was
Who's
us.
the commissioner, Wayne Gretzky?
I got to find it. It was Sammy Silber who tweeted it. She went through like every review, and there's 6 Ovechkin goals either this year or going into last year that have gotten taken away. And yes, I think the tinfoil hat theory is Toronto has an Ovechkin goal on the docket. Take it away. Like that's
weird.
That's how I feel at this point with that.
That was weird. They still can't really score very much.
They're terrible at scoring. I mean, it's not good. It's this is who they are. Like
I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, your heartstrings are getting tugged. You were calling them Stanley Cup contenders like 3 weeks ago.
Like a month ago.
Yeah.
Let's give it a little more time. Here's what it is. It's exactly like last season. They started off kind of sketchy, played really well for like 6 weeks. Now they're who they are. I think this is just like last year.
Long season. Sam Howell.
Here's
There's Sam Howell now.
I warned you about this last week, too, with Ethan Bear playing. Carberry has talked openly about how, like, we might put him on the second power play. Like, we think there's some untapped offensive potential.
Oh.
When you're talking about you're talking about the stay-at-home defenseman possibly giving you an offensive spark, like, this is just who you are now. Like, it's not great, but this is the hand they've been dealt, and I don't know if McClellan is going to try to go get someone at the trade deadline. He's been talking about trading a top 6 forward since the summer, it feels like.
Yeah.
They have this cap space with Backstrom coming up. Does he just wait until the offseason to really sign somebody? Does he give up draft picks? I don't know, but this is who they are. They need to lock down defensively, and Carberry kind of said the same thing after this last game as he did early in the season, where he was like, we can't just make one mistake and that's game over. Like, we can't play a perfect game every night, so we need to figure out how to mitigate some of these mistakes. The one thing I will say about this, too, though, is Hunter Shepard played on Saturday. I don't know if, like, he had the one amazing glove save late in the second period that was, like, maybe save of the year. Well, you know what I mean, save of the season. The team kind of rallied around that, and I'm observing this, that when guys like Shepard and Lindgren are in net and they give them the big save, the team gets a lift. But when Kemper plays and he doesn't make the big save, the whole team kind of slumps down and is like, here we go again. And so watch out tonight. They're playing the Penguins. The Penguins have been just like the Caps in that they're really up and down, but they put together really good games sometimes. And Crosby, by the way, has been amazing. He is not slowing down. Watch tonight if Kemper lets in a soft one, see how they respond to it, because I think this is my new theory now, is that if Kemper lets in a soft one, they kind of just air is let out of the balloon. But when the other two guys make a big save, or if Kemper makes a big save, they kind of get that lift and they play a little bit harder. Watch out tonight to see how that one goes.
All right, I'll get a full preview from you in a little bit. Speaking of weird refereeing things, I got to talk about the Lions thing next. Bram, watch the show, ESPN 630 at Sports Capital. All right, let's look back at Week 17 and start with the Saturday night Texas Chainsaw Massacre between the Cowboys and the Lions, of which a few things happened here at the end of the game, which were notable, of course. Mm-hmm. Yes, the referee screwed up.
Yes.
Undoubtedly.
Yep.
I do think the Lions are very much at fault.
Okay.
The referees did screw up.
Right.
But they are at fault, and I will tell you why.
All right.
So, as you know, at the end of the game, they scored a touchdown to make it a 1-point game. They decided they were going to go for 2 in the win.
Right.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Go for it. I don't know if it's the right thing, wrong thing to do, but whatever. That's what they chose to do. Go for it.
On that front, because I do want to say this, because I remember when I was thinking about it, I was literally watching it on my phone on the way home. On that front, the Lions couldn't get the 1 seed, correct?
Technically, they still were in play.
They were still in play, but either way,
Technically.
their division is won.
Division is won.
They would need some help from the Cowboys, but I thought for Dan Campbell to make that call, it was kind of like
to beat them though would almost ensure a 2 seed for them.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. But either way, they're getting a home playoff game because they won their division. So
Correct.
I thought honestly, grand scheme of things, nice decision. Like in the grand scheme of things, that mattered for them
Sure.
to just go for the win. Why not?
I also don't have a real issue with that.
Yeah, Cowboys
I'm
also
okay with
great
it.
at home, by the way, too. They're undefeated for like 2 years.
Had their division still been on the line, I think they'd have to think about it.
Agree,
a little bit.
100%. But
just take your chances in overtime.
didn't have
whatever.
much to lose, is what I'm
I
getting
agree. All right. So they decide at this point they're going to run essentially a trick play.
Yep.
Where they're going to do a tackle eligible play.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, fine. I mean, that's a little crazy too, but whatever. Like it's fine, and it worked actually. So they sent multiple people over to the referees to announce somebody was going to be tackle eligible, and the referees got confused.
Yep.
The referees stated to the Cowboys who was tackle eligible. That was the wrong person. The Lions are complaining today or that night that the referees mistook who said they were eligible.
Right.
And so 2 things here happened. The referees got confused and made the wrong call.
Yep.
And unfortunately, the Lions paid a price for something that they didn't really do wrong, except with one major exception here. And this is why they were stupid. You never send multiple players over to the referee at the same time. Because you can only name one as eligible.
That's right.
The object of it was to fool the Dallas defense, right? But the point is, you can't, because no matter who you tell the referee that you're reporting you're eligible, they then have to alert the Cowboys themselves who is eligible.
That's right.
It's announced. In fact, it's done over the loudspeaker. You hear it every
Correct.
time.
Yeah.
You can't do more than one. You can only do one. Well, I guess you could, but that'd be nuts.
Yeah,
It'd be like,
right.
Taylor Decker shouldn't be lining out outside the numbers. Okay, that would be nuts. Anyway, so they confused the referees when there's 20 seconds left in a game, and they sent all these people over. And Dan Campbell states, I told you before the game we were going to do this, and
Yes.
this is exactly what we were going to do. And I'll hear him on this. And I believe them that the right person said he was eligible. And I believe the other guy who was standing there and didn't say anything. I believe them. But the referees got confused at who it was because multiple people were there. And this is why the Lions are at fault. You don't do that. You can't confuse the Dallas defense with it because no matter who you say is eligible, they're going to tell the Dallas defense who that is.
Right.
So you need to know that they announced the right person to them. They clearly didn't know that.
Right.
They didn't know that. And by sending multiple people over to the referee, you risked confusing them, which they did. So the Lions are very much at fault. I agree that the call probably was gotten wrong. Now, none of us are on the field. I suppose NFL Films may have a mic on this and could actually hear if the other tackle literally said anything, because he said he didn't. But by sending multiple people over to the referee, you are risking confusing them, which they did, which is why you don't do that. Had Taylor Decker been the only person that walked over to the referee and then they got it wrong, well, then I think the Lions could really, really go crazy on them. But that's not what happened. Multiple people walked over to the referee in an attempt to confuse Dallas, of which you were never going to be able to do because they were going to turn around and on a mic throughout the stadium, tell Dallas who is eligible. It was not well thought out. It added a layer to it that wasn't necessary. I understand what he was thinking because he's like, we're going to confuse them by sending multiple tackles over to the referee.
Sure.
But in the end, they're going to tell the Cowboys exactly who did report as eligible. And that's why I think the Lions messed up. I think it was a mistake.
I have 2 parts here. One is there should be, if you thought the refs were getting it wrong and they make that announcement, Dan Campbell should have went running on the field.
Correct.
That should have been the first
They
thing.
announced it.
Right, correct. Exactly.
They have to announce it. The referee turns his mic on and announces blank is reported eligible.
Or that offensive tackle needs to stand up and go, no, I'm...
Correct.
And the refs need to make a judgment call there, as in like they're not taking advantage to stretch out the time or whatever you know what I mean though. They're not trying to gamesmanship whatever this play is about to be. Yes. They are literally saying no, it's me. That should have been the first thing. The part on your end trying to confuse them. Are you telling me a referee in the NFL can't differentiate
he wasn't,
one human from the next human?
They weren't trying to confuse the refs. They were trying to confuse the Cowboys.
Right.
But my point is, it's impossible to do because the referee is going to announce who's eligible. But it doesn't matter.
But the guy talking.
Sending a bunch. This isn't like the Chiefs ring around the rosy play where you send a bunch of guys and then everyone's like, what is going on here?
Right.
They still have to go back and then line up properly, which they did. But all they did was confuse the referees. They didn't confuse the Cowboys.
Sure, but what I'm getting at here is the referee needs to watch the guy talking who has a number in front of him. It's not like hockey. He doesn't wait for him to turn around.
I just think it wasn't well thought out.
That's fair.
That's all. It just really, because in the end, it's the referee doesn't go, one of these guys is eligible. You figure it out.
Right. I mean, that's
fair. Not what it is. And that's why you don't do that. You make it very, very clear. Like you go over there and say, I'm reporting as eligible. They make a motion where they rub the front of their jersey to do it most of the time. And of all the people, like of all the things I saw in the video, by the way, as well, I never saw either one of them actually make the motion to do that.
Right.
I saw them both walk over there, and I agree because there's a mic on Goff telling Decker you need to tell him that you're eligible. And he did go over to do it when another lineman was over there, but I didn't see him do the universal rub the jersey because it's loud. He didn't do the universal rub the jersey thing to show I'm the tackle eligible. So the refs messed up. But I think the Lions messed up too, and I just don't. It wasn't worth the squeeze of trying to pull this off. They made a mistake. Now, all right, they got screwed. Okay, right? Like the referees made the wrong call. I still think a lot of it's on them for doing what they did and confusing everybody by it, and not confusing the people that they needed to confuse the most, the Cowboys, because they were incapable of doing that. It was going to be announced. Once the ball got moved back to the 7, why you're going for 2 at that point made no sense to me.
Right.
It was like they went tilt.
Well, it
he
worked.
Went totally
it worked
tilt
because then they got the penalty against him.
But then they got to the 4 and went for it again.
Yeah, I mean.
Tilt. I've been at too many poker tables. Somebody loses a bad hand and gets rivered, and then all of a sudden goes all in without even looking at his next 2 cards.
This is what I was getting at the beginning of the segment was Cowboys are basically
cut your losses, kick the extra point.
But the Cowboys are basically undefeated the last 2 years at home. I see why Dan Campbell went for it.
The 1 seed was still perceptually on the line for them.
Right.
If they win the game, they have 12 wins. So do the 49ers.
Right.
All it takes is the Rams knocking them off in Week 18, and all of a sudden, you get the 1 seed.
Sure.
Once it got moved to the 7, I'm like, all right, you got screwed. I'll hear you. Control yourself for a minute. Kick the extra point and go to overtime. That's a low percentage play from the 7. It's a low percentage play. Why would you do it? They got lucky that they got a penalty. And even when they got the second chance, I'm like, calm down, guys. Kick the extra point, and they didn't do it.
Yeah.
So they kind of got what they deserved at that point. After they got screwed, they got what they deserved because the game should have been tied anyway. It's a chip shot extra point.
Sure. Either way, this opens up my discussion back is why are NFL referees not full-time? Like, why are they not just making this their whole entire livelihood? Because they're already getting, I think I read somewhere, the NFL average salary for their referees, like over $200,000. Why are we not just putting them all out in a facility in Arizona for from July until the end of the season? So everybody can really get this under wraps? Because, yes, I'm with you. Like, I understand how the Lions might have confused them, but it's still a call you can't blow. Like seriously.
I agree. I think they muddied it in a way that they thought would be confusing to Dallas, and all it did was confuse the referees, and that's their mistake for thinking about it that way.
Sure.
To not recognize that no matter what you do, they're going to announce to the other team your intentions.
Right.
Like, what are you thinking?
Right.
Like, why would you do that?
You still can't mess it up. It's not like they had the tackles jumping back and forth with each other or something like that. I mean, it was one guy talking. That's
right. And for Dan Campbell, I mean, like, I still don't get, when it got moved to the 7, how you don't kick an extra point at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, I get you're upset and you still want to win and you're thinking this way, but, like, control yourself for a minute, man.
Right.
Like this just happened. It's not ultimately going to matter because they are going to have a home playoff game, and they probably weren't getting the 1 seed either way, right? Okay, so all things ends equal. They're probably in the same spot that they were.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
What if he does this in a playoff game?
Yeah. Well, I don't think he would do.
I don't know.
Right.
See, like, this is the unhinged type of thing.
You're also the Lions too, though. So, like,
okay.
You kind of just go for it because you're the Lions. Everyone's going to make fun of you anyways if you lose the normal way.
It's extremely possible that they're going to play each other again in Dallas.
That's right.
Same scenario. Does he do it again?
Maybe. I don't know.
And if they lose, does everyone in Detroit go, well, we're the Lions and that's what we do? Or do they go, hey, buddy, just kick the extra point. Let's take our chances in overtime.
This year he's probably fine. Everyone's just happy to win the division. Everyone's crying in the locker room. He's probably fine no matter what he does this year. So that you kind of play with your house money a little bit.
This is a precursor to, though, in a critical moment in a playoff game, and it's going to happen.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
How's he going to act? And I would hope that he gets a little better judgment, because the second it went back to the 7, I get his anger and all that stuff. You got to think through what's the best case scenario for your team. And at that point, it was to kick an extra point. I don't know why he didn't do it.
Right.
All right. So the Cowboys win, which means if they win here on Sunday, they win the division, which means the Eagles slip sliding the wrong way, which I'll get to it now, is I knew this game was going to be close because they're weird. They're really weird right now. I don't know what's wrong with them. A.J. Brown wouldn't talk to the media afterwards. They clearly need 2 new coordinators again.
Yep.
They're the most miserable 11-win team I've ever seen in my life. They blew this late. Mm-hmm. Everyone's screaming about everything with them. There's a great clip of some girl like in the crowd screaming, "What are you effing doing?"
Yep.
Like screaming at
Pure
them.
Philly
Pure
jersey.
Philly. It's they gave up 29 second half points to the Cardinals on the road.
Yeah. No, I mean, you had the 49. I'm sure you saw some of the scenes. The 49ers players were all watching the game because they didn't think it was going to happen. Like,
and now they don't have to play this week.
That's right. Yeah. McCaffrey's already been, like, they already said they're resting him to,
why would they?
To rest him.
They shouldn't play anybody this week.
Right.
They're going to be like the Ravens. They can rest everybody. Then they get a bye. They're going to be fresh as a daisy when it rolls around.
Yep.
So, and for us, the Cardinals winning is a miracle.
Yes.
Because
correct.
all of a sudden now we got the second pick, but I can't believe I have to do this all week. I've got to look at all the outcomes to try to figure out strength of schedule, because when the Commanders likely lose on Sunday, we then have to figure out what all these other scores are going to mean for their draft position, and it's confusing.
I saw, hold on, let me see. I think JP had it. He said, this is from him, if Washington and New England both lose, it comes down to strength of schedule for the second pick, and it's the Falcons-Saints game that's probably going to determine it. Washington beat Atlanta. New England lost to New Orleans. So we have to root for the Saints in that scenario because it'll help on that end only.
I should get this Tankathon guy on to give me all the numbers.
Yeah, right.
Explain to me how the games matter here.
Right.
And then, so obviously, like, Washington winning will change all of it.
Right.
But actually, they could both. I mean, like, the Patriots could win. They're playing the Jets.
Right. Yeah,
if they just go out and win, then, all things being equal, like, you'll probably end up with the second overall pick. I think the Cardinals' strength of schedule is a little too high right now. So they would need. So I think the worst case scenario is Washington ends up at 3 if they lose. If they lose.
Exactly.
If they win, things change.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. Bills beat the Patriots, predictably close. They're not to be trusted exactly, and now they're in a bizarre situation. If they go down and win in Miami, they win the division. And if they lose, they might be out.
That's right. Yes. It's like full helter-skelter.
It's great.
It's fantastic.
It is great.
Yeah.
Because Miami's in no matter what.
Which, by the way,
it would be the division.
Yeah.
And then after what happened to them.
Oh, man.
Oh, God. Are the Ravens that good? Is that what it is?
Yeah. Yes. Also, I mean,
if they're going to play like they have in the last 6 days in the playoffs, nobody's beating them.
Nobody's beating them, period. That's what I was telling you. So I started to say it first hour, and I'll say it here. I watched a lot of that game. Lamar without Mark Andrews has actually opened the offense up. He's like not forcing the ball to him. Everybody's scoring. Flowers is scoring. Odell Beckham Jr. is making these crazy sideline catches again. And then Isaiah Likely, who, like I said, you and I have talked about for a couple years now, he's now like another number one tight end. Their offense is now opened up because he doesn't have his number one target that he's forcing the ball to every time now. Their offense has completely changed, and that's what's changing their games, is that they're just starting to boat race people now.
Yes.
Because it's they have not, what is it? They have not trailed by more than 7 at any point this season, I think.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous to think about.
What it used to be with him was how many of his weird Lamar plays is he going to make for them to win? Mm-hmm. Now he only needs to do a couple of them.
Yeah, he does 1 or 2, and they're fine.
Well, 1 or 2 tilts the game.
Yes, right. Correct.
They're a machine right now.
By the way,
just an absolute machine.
On the flip side of that game, too, he's lucky that the Dan Campbell thing happened and the college football playoff thing has happened. McDaniel should get shredded for having his starters in with the score the way it was. Like, Chubb got hurt when the Ravens had already scored like 49 points. Dude, you're already down a defensive end this year for the year. Your injuries are starting to stack up. Then Tua got hurt too.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know how serious that. I think he's still going to play, but it's still a shoulder injury. We know that Tua gets injured constantly. I just don't understand how he didn't kind of pull the plug on everybody when they got down a lot in that game. And he's not going to get killed for it because there's so many other things going on. But that was an absolute boneheaded mistake by him, because now they don't have either starting edge rusher. Like,
this is going to be haywire.
Yeah.
That game Sunday night.
Yes.
That's going to be haywire.
Correct. Exactly. And if the Dolphins lose, I wouldn't be shocked, because they're down so many major starters.
And then if they lose, they go on the road to start the playoffs.
Yeah, right.
Which would be where? Let's see. That's
Would it be
Kansas City.
Oh, Kansas City, yeah, because
It's
Baltimore's
probably Kansas City.
Good luck.
Well, they're both weird.
Yeah, right
now.
Right, and they only beat this. And by the way, well, yeah, they're both weird. But remember, didn't the Dolphins beat them in Europe? Wasn't that one of the Europe? Or did the Chiefs win? It was low scoring. I remember that.
I can't remember who won.
Give me 2 seconds.
I can't remember who won. I remember McDaniel did the whole thing. I know what the storyline is if we win
the Chiefs
or we
won.
lose.
21-14.
Yeah.
All right, so that could go either way then. All right, fair enough.
Okay.
All right.
Let's see. Bears beat the Falcons, so Heineke time's up. Art's in trouble. Justin Fields looked good again.
Yep.
So we're
Did you
all
hear the chants for him too?
Yeah.
Like the crowd was chanting, "We want Fields, we want Fields."
The locker room has said it too.
Yep.
This could be a weird decision for them.
Really weird.
It's going to be a really. I'll come back to that, because I want to. There was a really good piece by Jeremy Fowler and Courtney Cronin today on ESPN.com about how big a decision this is. Are they going to pass up Caleb Williams and get a haul for the number 1 pick? Or are they going to take him and move Fields and probably get, as they surmised, the 2nd or 3rd round pick for him? Because while as good as he is, you got to pay him soon.
You got to give him the option, right? Next year's the
option.
option.
You would pick up the option.
And then you're talking about extending him.
Right,
so.
And then you're talking $40 million a year is what you're talking about. With Williams, you start the clock over again. Yep. But if you think you're about to explode and emerge, because remember, they were 0-4 when they played us, which means they are 7-5
Right. Mm-hmm.
And they've got the number 1 pick,
right,
which they can get a ton of draft capital for. They have their own 1st round pick. They still have cap room to deal with. They have the makings of get this one right. They could be real good real fast.
And looking into next year, the Vikings don't know. You don't know what they're doing at quarterback. We don't know with Love. He's been good the second half, but we don't know with him.
I would stick with him if I'm Green Bay. I don't think there's any reason.
What I'm getting at here is it's not like your division
they didn't pick up his option, right? I don't think they did.
I don't remember on Love.
I don't feel like they did. They could always franchise him if they had to.
Yeah, but either way, what I'm getting at here is it's not like the Lions are really good too, but it's not like they have an amazing quarterback option. Like they should be able to compete next year is what I'm getting at.
Yeah,
they should be good enough to compete in the division.
I agree. And people forget they drafted Hendon Hooker, and he got hurt late in the Tennessee season and probably would have been drafted higher. So I think that they have a possibility of a quarterback that replaces Goff that we'll have to see. Yeah. They may already have that in line with Hooker. It's hard to tell. I mean, you haven't seen him, so you don't know, but there's a possibility they already have Goff's successor in line already.
Love did them a favor. They didn't pick up the 5th-year option, but he got a 1-year extension. So they got it for a better price.
Okay, so they get one more year.
Yeah.
Okay, so they got one more year. They got to make a choice on him.
Yep.
Okay. Colts beat the Raiders, so that essentially ends them. Mm-hmm. Colts now still have a shot to make the playoffs at 9-7. That's an amazing record for that team, considering the roster that they have, considering the quarterback that they brought in has barely played. That's pretty amazing. Raiders got a lot of thinking to do about quarterback themselves. 7-9, they won't be in position to get one of the top 3. So are they going to move up? That's a possibility.
Right.
Are they trying to get Caleb Williams? That screams like something they would probably try to do.
Right.
What would they give up to do it? Would they go full-on bonkers crazy and do it? They also don't have a GM right now, so we don't really know. I mean, they do, but will he be there? Because they got to figure out what they're going to do, so we'll have to see with them. Rams got away with beating the Giants 26-25. Mason Crosby's field goal attempt to win the game landed 20 yards short. It was like I kicked it.
Did you see he was rocking number 21?
Yeah.
Because there's no
Did you see that kick?
digits. Yeah, it was terrible.
Why is he still in the NFL? He can't kick the ball very far.
It was ridiculous.
It was ridiculous.
Just go for it, dude.
Yeah, at that point, just go for it. So the Rams, they're in, right? I think they qualified.
Yeah, I think that was the case, yes.
I think they did. Let's see. Saints beat the Buccaneers. That's notable. The Buccaneers were hot. Buccaneers still are a win the division situation, right?
Right.
So they play who? They play Carolina too, right?
Yes. Yep.
All right. So the Saints are in trouble.
Correct.
Saints are in trouble. I mean,
Yeah, Rams clinched, by the way. They
Rams
did clinch.
clinched.
Yeah, and no one in the South is clinched. So
that game's going to be a nothing burger Rams 49ers because the 49ers
Neither
clinched the
one.
1 seed and the Rams can't do better than they already have. So why would they play their guys?
Right.
Doesn't make any sense. Buccaneers, that was a touch of a surprise that they lost to them. But all they have to do now is beat Carolina. They win the division, and then the Saints will be praying for probably other things to happen.
right.
Jaguars beat the Panthers 26-0. Most notable thing, though, is the owner threw a drink into the crowd and hit a fan with it. I've still heard nothing from the NFL about it. It's on video.
Right. And
It's not like we didn't see it. We did.
I believe Florio also said that is conduct detrimental to the league. So they have to do something. They've
got to do something.
Right. All the jokes on Twitter were like, dude, if you're the fan, why are you not flopping? Like, you should have been on the ground.
You need to be in a hospital in traction right now.
I was saying if one drop got in my eye, I'm acting like I'm blind. Like, I want every penny from that dude.
That fan needs to have awareness. You need to know who threw that drink.
That's right.
at you.
Yes.
That's one of the richest people on earth.
Correct. Exactly. Yeah. So come on, man. Flop a little bit. Give you $1 million, most likely.
We already talked about the Ravens. I don't know how Lamar Jackson doesn't get MVP now. I mean, McCaffrey's had an incredible year.
No,
but I don't know. I
that.
I don't know how you don't do it. 13-3, 1 seed. Probably could take the week off. He had, 5 touchdowns?
Yep.
The Dolphins, who scored 70 on somebody earlier this year, had 56 dropped on them.
Right.
They're a weird team.
Correct. With Lamar, too, and the Ravens in general. It's really funny how they've been this good for this long, but it's only been like the last 2 weeks that everybody seems to actually be giving them their flowers. Like, quietest rise to the 1 seed that we've seen in a long time.
Yeah, well, nobody believed it.
Yeah,
you know
I
what?
guess.
Because early in the year, their offense wasn't scoring that much.
Right.
His numbers weren't that crazy.
That's what I was saying. Mark Andrews got hurt, and all of a sudden, their offense just
exploded.
Opened up. It's the weirdest thing in the world because he's top 5 tight end.
Yeah.
Like now their offense runs through everybody, not just him. So.
Let me take a quick break. We'll do the rest of it next. Bram, watch the show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. All right, let's see. Games that we haven't gotten to yet. Texans beat the Titans 26-3. I saw a Mike Vrabel press conference today where asked about losing. He says, it effing sucks. That was pretty good.
I feel like he said that before, but
yeah
he's
they're
right.
5-11, 1-7 away from home. Texans are 9-7. Have had an unbelievable season with their new head coach and their new rookie quarterback. And they're in the playoffs if they win.
Yep. Right.
If they win this weekend, or if they were to tie and get a Jacksonville loss and a Pittsburgh loss or tie, they would be in as well. So the Texans, if they are a first year under new head coach in the playoffs, that's a humongous first season for them.
As soon as Stroud was practicing last week, this game was already over. That team rallies behind him. He's clearly the leader, and the Titans season is just playing out the string at this point. So I'm not shocked at all the result on that one.
I picked the Steelers to beat the Seahawks, although I called that pass for sure.
Yep.
Steelers win. They move to 9-7. So once again, Mike Tomlin will not have an under 500 record.
Yep.
Mason Rudolph started again. He will start again this week. Kenny Pickett got real mad at the media today.
Yes.
When they asked him, did you ask not to be the backup quarterback? And he flatly said that wasn't the case.
Yeah. I've never gotten that sense with him that he's that type of player. So I don't know. I think I would be pretty pissed too if I was him.
I will stay on. Not that I think any of them are the answer, but I think it's pretty clear now that the third string quarterback all year is actually the best quarterback on that team.
Yep,
and they've come around to realizing it, and they're playing him, and they'll see where the chips fall with him. And my gut says your boy Hands will either be a backup next year or not be there. Then I think Pittsburgh is very much in line to go get a quarterback too.
No, I agree.
But they're, same thing like the Raiders or some of the others. You're not high enough to get the right guy.
Right. I agree with you on that. By the way, too, like had your boy Hands said that, Tomlin would have cut him. Like he would have been released last week. Like that's Tomlin's thing. Where what was his line? Is we don't have hostages.
Yeah.
He would have cut him. I feel like everyone should connect the dots there. Any other franchise, you're probably holding on to the quarterback. Tomlin would have literally cut his quarterback if he said, "I don't want to start." So
there are ones that I would look at for like Penix.
Yeah, I would agree.
Like if he falls down into the middle of the first round or something
100%.
like that,
Yep.
like they could look at him and go, "We'll take him."
I agree.
Let's see. So the Seahawks lose, which puts they're in trouble. They might be looking for a quarterback too.
Yep.
They're another one.
Yep.
Probably.
Yep.
Right.
Correct.
They're paying Geno a lot of money now. It's 8-8. Locke's giving them the same results.
Yeah. The reports already started. They're going to probably cut Geno and go with Locke if they don't find a solution, regardless. But yeah, it wouldn't shock me if they're going after a quarterback. I mean, imagine if they went after Penix.
Possible.
Like their draft pick might actually
that's
put them in
true.
a great spot to get him, and all of a sudden you got the hometown guy.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Crazy Peyton won a game against the Chargers. He benched Russ, started Stidham. They didn't score any points. They won anyway because Easton Stick is whatever. 16-9. They're now 8-8.
Yep.
I mean, this is all about what's going to happen with Russ, which is where's he going to go?
Right. Correct. Exactly.
And then I saw somebody put out a thing about, well, after no one's going to trade for him, but they were like, after they release him, that because of the money owed from the Broncos, you could actually sign him for something in the very low $1 to $2 million for next year. So he actually becomes this massive bargain
okay.
for somebody else because they're paying the freight on him
Oh, okay.
for next year.
Got it.
He may or may not agree to that, but like,
Sure. Yeah. Right.
I mean, he's getting all this money no matter what. He wisely didn't change his contract. I don't blame him. He also was very honest last week about it. If you saw that, he laid out the whole thing.
Yep.
Instead, all that is true, that they came to me and did this. The NFL and the NFLPA had to get involved. I didn't think they would do it. We didn't think it was a real threat, but here we are.
Yeah, no, 100%. I actually thought much more highly of Russ when he sat there and answered those questions. It was honest and didn't lose his cool as some guys probably could, and stood on there. He was was he on the sidelines?
I don't know.
I don't remember either. I honestly didn't pay much attention to that game, but I assume he would be, though. I mean, I don't know.
He's got to be professional.
Right, correct, exactly.
So he probably did show up, put on his jersey, and let's ride. Let's see. Chiefs beat the Bengals 25-17. Jake Browning thing is over with.
Yeah.
He went sideways in the second half.
Sure.
They had a lead. They blew it. Again, the Chiefs' offense is average. It's not particularly great, but because their division is a little like there was no other team that emerged, I thought somebody would. Maybe it would be the Broncos. Probably would be the Chargers. Unlikely, but I guess could have been the Raiders. Yeah. None of them did.
Yeah,
so they crawl into the playoffs,
and
so they get a home game again. So they're going to be a tough out. But we'll see who they play. It'll be interesting to see who they play.
That whole division threw up on themselves. The 1 year the Chiefs are going sideways, and
there was an opening.
Yeah, all three of you couldn't muster together a good enough record.
Well, because next year, promise you, they're going to go get a big-time receiver.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
100% they're going
Or they're just going to trade for one of the other disgruntled ones because there's one every single year now that's disgruntled.
That's right.
A.J. Brown.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They're going to get somebody.
Take A.J. Brown off the division's hands.
Right, sure. That'd be great. If A.J. Brown goes there and Kelsey and Lane Johnson retire, I mean, that's as good an outcome as we could ask for.
That's all we could hope for.
Yeah. And then the Packers beat the Vikings 33-10 because the Vikings played another quarterback who's not ready to play.
That was terrible.
Jordan Love did have a good game. It's not a surprise that that's the outcome. And the Packers actually could make the playoffs at 8-8. They could actually get in.
Correct. Exactly.
All right. I don't know how much stock to put into this, but I'll read it anyway because it's clutch points and they have a lot of followers and I don't know. But they're reporting that Kyle Kuzma is expected to be made available by the Wizards at the deadline for, quote, multiple first-round picks.
Okay.
I mean, that doesn't seem something that would be that off, really.
Yeah, no, I said this when they re-signed Kuz, that I didn't think this was actually a signing for him to stay in D.C., that it was we're going to sign him to move him later. So I was on this one. Like, I didn't, unless they were good this year. But they were literally telling us out loud, we're not going to be good.
No.
We are going to be the suck this year.
I gave them, when they acquired Poole, which was never the original plan, but when they did acquire him, I went, well, this may put a crimp into that because he's a volume scorer and they may win more games than you think they're going to win. It turns out he's a very unserious person at times, and that didn't happen, and they've spiraled, and so all of that's in debate. I think the way that he's kind of played here the first whatever amount of games they've played doesn't make him a really viable trade candidate, I don't think. If he was like lighten it up.
Yep.
And they were just kind of losing close games.
Sure. Yeah,
I think it might be a little bit different. Kuzma's probably viewed as more of a sure thing if you bring him in. Not as a number one, but like a sure thing. So well, let's see. Well, the Lakers don't have any first round picks, right?
Yeah, they've gotten rid of all of them pretty much, yes.
Right.
So he's not going back there.
No. I bet a contender goes and gets him. That wouldn't surprise me.
Trying to think. The Heat never want to move there first, so good luck with that.
Will we take Tyler Hero?
God,
they always ask for.
No. Please no.
I don't know. That's a good one. I don't know where that one's going to go.
I don't know where he fits, but maybe this is what always happens, though. These types of players where you and I are sitting here in January that don't make any sense, all of a sudden, it just takes like 3 teams to just be generally interested, and all of a sudden the asking price goes up because no one wants the other team to get them. So the fact that they're putting this out there right now tells me that essentially the Wizards are going, start lining up your chips, boys, because somebody's going to get them, and if you want them, you need to start talking to us right now.
The Kings have said they're openly trying to be active to trade because they know they can't get free agents to go there, so they have to trade for people.
Right.
And I don't know if he's right for them because they play up-tempo and shoot a lot of threes, and they're kind of a high-tempo scoring team, and I don't know if that's him, really. So that one, but maybe, because he'd be someone they could acquire. Toronto's moving people around, so I don't know why we would acquire Siakam, but that doesn't really make that. It seems like they're selling off too. That doesn't seem to make too much. Well, they did get RJ Barrett back. I'm not so sure that was a really bad trade for the Raptors. That one over when they traded OG to New York and they got Barrett back, I was kind of like,
I didn't.
Feels like a sideways move for both teams. Really,
I didn't quite understand that one, but I mean, those are 2 Eastern Conference teams trying to compete. So.
I don't think Boston would get Kuzma, but I don't know.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it takes a contender like that to
maybe
add somebody.
Maybe the Bucks do. Maybe the Bucks.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it takes a contender to just say we need an extra shooter. You know, I
actually think he'd be great on Milwaukee.
I would agree with you. Now,
that'd be a really
can he wear
good
what he wants to wear in Milwaukee?
You can. They might not be as forgiving.
He probably would love to go to New York to do all that stuff. But.
Oh, that's right. But the Nets and the Knicks, I mean, well, who are we getting from the Knicks if we're trading him?
Trade him to the Nets for Spencer Dinwiddie.
We should. We should.
He's back. Welcome back.
I don't know where he's going.
Yeah.
And I agree with the reporting that you're not looking for a player back. You're trying to get picked. You have to take something back because you have to make the trades work. But, I don't know. I believe it. And I believe that they probably will get real offers for him. He's been professional through all of this.
Gonna do dream scenario?
Sure.
Things get wonky, and the other disgruntled guy that we've already talked about is KD. And
why would he come here, though?
Do you
don't want to come here.
No, but do you all of a sudden want to give them Kuz and a first or 2 first-round picks to get KD to come play here?
Come play here to what? Sell tickets?
Pretty much, yeah.
Because he's not going to win.
I'm going to those games. So, I mean, I don't know. You shift the plan.
Doesn't KD like to win, though? I mean, he's not at the point in his career where he's going Lionel Messi.
KD demands Bilal finally starts, and then all of a sudden, maybe we're actually a little bit better.
No, KD, where's KD going? He's forcing his way out.
He could be a three-way deal, though. KD and Kuz involved with something.
That's possible.
I think that's very, very possible.
But that would be that owner in Phoenix acknowledging that I've just got to blow it up before it ever really got started. That's what he's acknowledging.
KD's the oldest and most injury prone out of all 3, though. I think you could make an argument there that because they're going to get something back, the salaries have to match. So you have to change something up, and you're still trying to be competitive with Booker and Beal at that point.
I think he needs to suck it up for the year with those 3 and just see how it goes.
You could also do this too. You could try trading KD and getting a bunch of players to actually fill your roster too, because that's their biggest problem.
And then Beal's their number 1.
Correct.
We live that.
Booker's their number 1.
Yeah.
Booker's their real number 1.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, don't tell Brad.
Yeah, don't tell Brad.
He's 1A. That's right. Wolf season. Who gets to be Wolf season?
B-E comes for B-O. Beal is ahead of Booker in the alphabet.
Kuzma. I got to survey this a little bit. It's got to be a contender. The other one, too, is Indiana's pretty good. They could use another person.
Yeah, right. The Mavs trade for him.
Who's making those decisions these days?
Mark. Mark said he's making this.
Yeah, he said he is for now. That's a weird deal, by the way.
I'd
love to hear him explain to me why he's running the basketball operations when he isn't the owner anymore and he's not classically a GM. Does that even make any sense to you?
No, but
that makes no sense to me.
It's genius by him because he gets to sell out and take his money.
How's that real, though? How is that real that he is running the basketball operation, but isn't the majority owner any longer.
Because if you want to
I've never heard. Have you ever heard of the owner becoming strictly the GM? I've never heard of anything like that.
Well, either way, though, he gets to tell the people that wanted to buy the team that's what's happening. So, I mean,
for now.
Yeah.
Like, there's got to be a limit to it. And I can't imagine that he just wants to be the GM. I'm surprised he didn't sell the whole thing.
Right.
I wonder what that's about. He's waiting for those Sands people to build Mavericks land with a giant casino, and then the team's worth a lot more than what he sold his share for, and that's when he sells out of the rest of it. That's what he's doing.
Right.
That's all he's doing. He's exit strategizing this. That's all.
Right.
What's he buying next?
Well, remember,
Is it going to be sports again? I don't think it will be.
Well, remember, we also had the discussion too because it was going to the.
He's running for president probably next time. Next cycle, I bet.
But you got to remember too. Remember, he sold to it's the group out in Vegas.
Yeah, Las Vegas Sands.
Yeah. So I mean. He could just be.
Yeah,
he could get a stake in that. That's what I'm saying.
Well, that's what I think is happening. He sold the majority percentage because that's what they wanted. They're going to build a giant casino,
right,
and build a new stadium, and then the team's going to be worth a lot more, and that's when he's going to sell the rest of it.
And it's going to be the Cuban hotel,
yeah,
or whatever the hell he wants to make.
That's right.
He'll have his own slot machine.
Then they'll force him to sell out the rest of it. It'll probably be at a higher percentage then because it's worth more, and so he'll get that, and then he'll walk at that point. And then what's he going to do next? He's going to run for president. What else is he going to do?
He's going to go make a private island.
You'll see. He's going to start appearing on Fox News a lot. You'll see.
We'll see.
That's what's going to happen. All right, we'll be right back. Bram, what's the show? ESPN 630 Sports Capital.